Hi, my name's Brianna, and this is Whiteoak Goodies. I'm really excited today because today's my birthday. Yay! Turning 27 today. We've got a lot of fun plans going on today, but I wanted to make my own birthday cake this year, and I'm going to be using real flowers. And in this video, I'm going to be teaching how to do a couple of the basic decorating techniques, such as a crumb coat, a base coat, and also showing how to use some of the basic tips. So I already have some cake baked off. I really just used some Betty Crocker cake mix. I know it's a little cheap and there's quite the controversy between real recipes and Betty Crocker cake mix, but I'm cheap. I like Betty Crocker. I think it tastes great. But I went ahead and I baked off two 8-inch rounds, and I went ahead and I trimmed them and I cut them. And you're going to see that I'm not a very good job at cutting straight. It's a little lopsided, and you know what? That's really just fine. Now this is my frosting. Like last time, I made some Snow White buttercream. What I did was I went ahead and I added some caramel mix to it so that way I have a nice rich caramel frosting. And I put down just like a good blob of it, which is probably like 1/4 of a cup to 1/2 cup. And we're just going to kind of push that off to the edges and move it side to side and just get a nice even layer on there. And as I said earlier, I'm not a very good job at cutting straight. And as you can see, it kind of has a little curve. What I like to do is I just kind of like to puzzle piece the pieces together. And you can kind of tell that one side's a little bit thicker than the other. And you can just kind of press that in there and just kind of give it a little squeeze. Not really a squeeze, but a good press. Get a nice squish. Make sure it all adheres. And we're going to go ahead and do that again. Do another good glob. Because, I mean, you can't go wrong with frosting. The spatula that I'm using for it right now is the Wilton brand. It's kind of a bent edge spatula. It's the little tiny one. It's got a really nice grip on it. I love it. But it's kind of a 9A size. We're going to kind of keep pushing those frosting over to the edges. Alright. And I'm going to put on the other layer. And again, you can kind of tell it's a little bit lopsided, but that's okay. A good way to hide that lopsidedness is at the end, just add more frosting. And again, you can't go wrong with more frosting. So, to do a crumb coat, what we're going to do is we're going to take a big glob of frosting and we're going to put that on top. A lot of frosting. I'm going to switch over to my medium spatula, and it's just kind of a nice straight edge, nice little thin area, and again, that nice grip. And I bought all of these utensils at Michael's. Local craft store. Good Lord, can't talk very well. So what I did was I just kind of pushed the frosting back and forth until it started to fall off the edges. And then I just go back and forth, pushing it along the sides until I start getting a nice even layer. And you're going to start seeing that some of the cake is starting to peek through. And that's just fine because again, we're just doing a crumb coat. The purpose of crumb coats is just to kind of keep the crumbs inside. And you can tell that there's not much crumbs in that, but that's fine. But the purpose of crumb coats is just, as I said, to hold the crumbs in. And I'm just going to kind of scrape off a lot of it. You don't want a whole lot of frosting on the crumb coat because it's going to get too much frosting on the layers afterwards. And I actually don't normally do crumb coats. I really just do crumb coats just for like wedding cakes, or if I'm doing like warm cake. I usually like to keep my cake frozen. And just kind of, as I said, just kind of scraping it, and you see a lot of that edge falling off. And I'm just going to scrape off the top as well. This is a nice opportunity to go ahead and level your cake off and make sure it's nice and flat on top. Once we kind of get the base coat going, the crumb coats, we're going to go ahead and throw it in the freezer, and that's going to let that frosting harden. And it'll give you a nice solid base. You can tell that I'm scraping off a lot of frosting. And that's just fine. Another one of my favorite tools to use is a bench knife. It's going to have that nice straight edge, and you can just use that to fold the corners of the cake back into itself. Get a nice clean sharp edge. You can go over the sides and scrape off quite a bit again. Gives you a nice straight edge. See? If you start to get a few crumbs in the frosting, just kind of put that crumbly frosting off to the side. The part of the crumb coat is just so that way you don't get crumbs in your base frosting, and if you put the crumbs back in the frosting, that kind of defeats the purpose. Alright, how are we looking here? Looking a little lopsided on this side, so just all I need to do is just add a little bit more frosting to that corner, just to smooth it out a little bit. I'm going to go ahead again and use my bench knife to kind of smooth that all out again. Alright, and then you can also take your bench knife and you can kind of scrape off your turntable. Kind of gets all that extra frosting taken off. The turntables are really nice to use because then you can churn your cake as you're frosting, and that way you don't have to like stop, pick up the cake, turn the plate around. It gets nice, even, smooth sides. Ta-da! And I'm going to be right back. I'm going to go get a cake board. I'm going to kind of show you kind of a little bit of an advanced technique on how to get the cake off the turntable and onto your gold board or regular board. I'll be right back. Alright, so then for this technique, I have my board. This is a 10-inch board going for an 8-inch cake. Usually when you want to do boards, you want to have a board that's going to be 1 inch to 2 inches larger than the cake that you have. And I'm going to be taking my bent edge spatula. It's a little bit bigger than the others. I don't like to decorate with it because it just kind of like arches your arm too much. But I like to do it this way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slide my spatula under my cake and kind of start to pick it up. And I'm just going to push it off the turntable and onto the board. And voila. And then we're just going to throw this in the freezer and we're going to let that harden. Get a nice crust on it. Alright, so I'm going to be going over some of our basic tips that we've got going on here and kind of how to do a frosting bag. So I've got here just like our basic simple frosting bag. It's just a little plastic one. It's actually a bigger one, and you can buy those at Michael's in different sizes and in different numbers. So some of our basic stuff that we've got going on here is we've got our couplers, which is that we've got our coupler with our coupler ring. This is the base, this is the ring. We've got our star tip, a rose tip, a leaf tip, or also known as a bird's beak, and a writing tip. Now all of these can come in several different sizes, and this is just kind of the basics. So to make a frosting bag is you're going to take your bag and you're going to kind of roll it over the edges and form like a little cup with your hand. You're going to kind of push that in, form that little cup, just like so. And then you're going to take your coupler base and you're going to drop it in there and push it all the way down to the edge. So it's going to kind of start to get stuck at the bottom there. And you're just going to take your scissors and you're going to start cutting right above the edges. And you're just going to take that and you're just going to slide it around. And you should just be able to pop that right off. Again, it makes a nice snug tight fit so that way your coupler doesn't pop off while you're frosting. Some of the different types, I'm going to start off with the star tip and we'll kind of go over that. And you're just going to put that on the edge, hold it in place with your finger. You're going to take your ring and slide it on. You're just going to screw it in place. The nice thing about this way is you can have one bag with the same color, and then you can switch out the different types of tips so that way you don't have to make multiple bags. So I'm going to go ahead and put my hand back in there, get that nice big cup thing going on, and I'm going to take my scoop of frosting and I'm just going to kind of shove it in there, and I'm going to squeeze my hands around the other side and just kind of squish it off. And I can kind of scrape the spatula on the edges. I'm going to get a little bit more here, see, and just scoop it in there. If it's too difficult to use with your hands, you can always put the bag in a cup and scrape the frosting edges on the edges of the cup. And I'll show you how to do that with a different bag later on. And we're just going to kind of shake some of that frosting down. So you're going to hold the bag just like so and notch your fingers and squish the frosting down until it's all the way down to the bottom. So to hold the bag, you can either hold it up here, which is a little bit more difficult, or what you can do is you can squish your hand down to about the middle of the bag and just kind of twist. Makes it a little bit easier to handle, less frosting to maneuver. I'm going to move these over. So then the different types of tips is that the purpose of the star tip is to do a couple different things. You can do nice little stars, or you can do rosettes, or you can do borders, shell borders, and I'll kind of go in how to do that a bit more later. Then just to switch out the frosting tip, you just untwist it, set it off to the side, pop it off. We'll set that right there so that way we all know what it is. I'm going to switch over to our rose tip, And it's just kind of like a teardrop shape. I'm going to put that ring back on. And some of the different things that you can do with this is you can do either nice strip, or if you want, you could have the fat side down and the skinny side top, and you can make like a ribbon. And later on I'll kind of show how to make roses. It's a little bit difficult for right now. But the other thing that you can do is you can make a daisy, where you're going to have the skinny side in and the fat side out. You're going to squeeze, stop, and pull down. You're going to turn your bag ever so slightly, squeeze, stop, pull, turn, squeeze, stop, pull, squeeze, stop, pull, and you're rotating your bag this whole time. So you got a nice little daisy going on. And then you can just go ahead and unscrew that again, put that off to the side, put that right there. Next I'm going to be doing the bird's beak or the leaf tip, and that's going to have like that nice V shape going on. I'm going to put that on there. Screw it on. And to make really pretty leaves with this, we're going to kind of build off of that daisy. You're going to want to have the open spaces off to the sides, and then you're going to want to have the closed tip on top. And what you're going to do is you're going to put it up close to that daisy, and you're going to squeeze, stop, pull. And just to kind of show that again, squeeze, stop, pull, squeeze, stop, pull. Really easy. You can do little short ones, or you can do long ones that have more of a texture to it. Just nice and simple little leaves. And we're going to switch that out for our last tip, which is a writing tip. Again, set that off to the side. And now the writing tip that I have is a size 5. And the way I know that is on all of the frosting tips, that's going to have the brand and the number next to it, underneath it. And that can range from, I think 5 is the largest and then 1 is the smallest. Actually, I take that back. 0 is the smallest. It's really tiny and it's very detailed orientated. So then to use that, all it is you can use it to do little swirls, the nice little piping. You can spell with it. Let's see if I can spell upside down. Ta-da! Holy cow, I'm doing it upside down. Ta-da! You can do all sorts of different types of things with this. Now, since I've been doing this for a while now, our cake is probably frozen, is nice and frozen in the freezer. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch back over to our star tip. And then I'm going to go pull that out and we'll get started on the next step. Alright, so I went ahead and I pulled the cake out of the freezer. A nice way to tell that it's good and ready to go is you can go ahead and like tap the frosting and you know it's not going to come back up and it's got that nice crust on it. So I told you about how you can take a frosting bag and fill it up with a cup. I went ahead and put in a large tip in here. It's a nice flat tip on the top and then a serrated edge on the bottom. This is a 789. It's really nice use to cover the outsides of cake, which makes it really quick and easy and simple. And I went ahead and I put that in. That's just the same thing, just without the coupler on how to make the bag. But I went ahead and already made the cup. You just slide it in there and just slide it back over. Just kind of push your hand back in there, just kind of open up that bag, just like so. You're going to take your spatula with all your frosting, and you're just going to kind of drop it in there and just scrape off the edges. And just kind of push that frosting into the bag a little bit more. And I'm actually going to go ahead and pull that out. With most bags that you can get at like Michael's, that would probably be enough to get you going. But I like to have mine extra full. Kind of pull it down a little bit, shake it a little bit, just kind of push some of that extra frosting down. Get another good glob in there. As I said, I've actually been decorating for about, oh god, I think I counted out to 10 years now. So yeah, 17. Yeah, that sounds about right. Wow, it's been a long time. But anyway, I'm gonna have that bag. And these ones I like to hold up towards